Welcome to Pait's webinar on all things Viva. We're going to do an intro to Microsoft Viva today, and then really do a deep dive into Viva Connections. And Ryan Keller here is going to take us through most of that content. I will be here to provide color commentary, but let's go ahead and introduce ourselves officially, Ryan.
Sounds good. Right. Hello, everybody. So I'm Ryan Keller. I'm a modern workplace consultant here with Pait Group. Been with the company for almost 7 years now and been working with SharePoint for a little over, 16 years now, and their Microsoft technologies. Spent a lot of time in the branding and design space in that arena as well, and do quite a bit of training on all things SharePoint as well.
Awesome. And I am Katrin Weichsel, but everybody calls me Kat. I'm also a modern workplace consultant at Pait Group. I've been now with SharePoint since 2005, so 18 years. And I was an actual intranet manager starting in 2005, which is why I go back so far with SharePoint. I spent most of my career as an intranet manager, so I understand all those pain points that our customers experience. And I love working with and talking about SharePoint and the Microsoft 365 suite. And I also do training with Pait as well.
Righty. So since this is kind of our first of our Viva series, we thought we would go through just really high level. What is Viva? It's essentially just a suite of products for enhancing your company's digital workplace, bringing up enhanced employee experiences, insights, improving well-being, enhancing communication. So it's basically designed around the employee experience at your organization. There are a lot of different apps within the suite, some of which are included with your Microsoft 365 subscription. Some are available through a paid subscription, and we'll cover that in just a second. But there's most of the Viva suite. There's also an app called Viva Sales, which is not part of the suite, is more of a standalone product. Take a look at what's included and what is paid and what that pricing looks like as well. So let's go ahead and go through what is included. So the top two, Viva Connections and Viva Engage, which we'll be having another webinar in a month or so, not to spoil anything, but we'll be on the lookout for that as well. But Viva Connections and Viva Engage are both included with your Microsoft 365 license. Viva Learning and Viva Insights have some features included with your license. Other features within those apps are premium subscriptions, so you can add that premium layer on top of those apps, either standalone or as part of the entire Viva Suite bundle. And finally, Viva Topics and Viva Goals are only available as part of an add-on subscription. All right, so as of January, here's what our plans and pricing look like. And there is a URL at the bottom of the slide here. You can.
I like how you include that too, as of January, because we never know.
This is always changing. It's just in case anyone's watching this recording later on. This is current as of January 2023. So this is what the pricing looked like right from Microsoft's pricing page. But again, Viva Connections and Engage are included. All the other Viva apps can be purchased as part of the suite, or you can get them individually. Before July 1st of 2023, it looks like they are offering kind of a discount of $9 per user per month. Normally that would be $12 a month per user, and that is billed as an annual subscription. You can also include individual apps if you don't want the entire suite. If you're just looking for, say, Viva Topics, you can add that for $4 per user per month. Viva Goals is $6 per user per month, and again, that Viva Sales, kind of a standalone app, is quite a bit more at $40 per user per month. There is one other option to get the suite with Glint, which does offer a little bit more employee engagement, insight, just kind of keeping the pulse on your organization. So that's kind of what that Glint piece is there. Real high level stuff. We encourage you to get a hold of Microsoft, check out all the plans and pricing, and see what works for your organization. But just as a high level, this is kind of what you're looking at for pricing if you're looking to bring that in.
And just for quick clarification on that slide, Ryan, it's
Absolutely.
for those 3 that are $4 a
Mhm.
month. That is if you buy just Viva or just Insights or just Topics,
Yes,
correct? You don't
that
get
is
all 3 for
that's correct.
$4.
Yep.
Okay.
Those are each $4 per month. I should have
Yeah.
definitely put each in there
Oh
somewhere, but
no,
yes, learning
just wanted
insights
to
and topics are
clarify.
each $4 per month. Yes, that's a good thing to point out. All right, so since we're talking about Viva Connections this year, let's go ahead and kind of jump into that piece. So we're going to be looking at what is Viva Connections, what can you do to prepare for it, how we set it up, how do you use it. So we'll kind of run through the whole gamut of Viva Connections today. So what is it? So it is, again, part of the Viva Suite. And the idea behind Viva Connections is that it's designed to bring together basically all things intranet and communications related. So it's supposed to bring together SharePoint and Teams and Yammer and Stream, and all that is done through the Viva Connections dashboard and the Viva Connections feed web parts. It's also an app in Teams that allows us to bring in that intranet right into Teams. So the idea is you're already in Teams chatting and collaborating with your coworkers and colleagues. Why not bring the intranet into Teams as well, and then you never have to leave? So it's really also an app that's geared a lot towards frontline workers. You're building out a dashboard with your most relevant content, your links to the most important things, the news feed that is it's the most up-to-date news you can get, tools that you might need, tasks you might need to accomplish, important communications. It's almost like setting up a micro intranet or an intranet within your intranet. So you spent the time building out a nice, fully fleshed out intranet, and now we need to kind of boil that down to the most important stuff that you want people to see when they pull up Teams on their mobile device, for example. You want to see those most relevant links and tools right at their fingertips. You can still use that on your homepage. You can build out your dashboard on a homepage, and we'll take a look at what that exactly means and looks like. But that's kind of the idea, is that Viva Connections is almost like a micro intranet that takes your most important content and puts that right at the fingertips of your users. So it is also the primary mobile experience in Teams when you have it enabled. So what does that mean? It's essentially when we open up our Viva Connections app within Teams, and actually let me get my laser pointer dot out here, right down here in the screenshot. This is right from my phone here, what I click on if I want to get to the Pait group home within the Teams app. So I could obviously launch the SharePoint app, but I'm in Teams a lot, chatting with Kat, chatting with our other coworkers, and if I need to open up the home page for Pait, I click on this Pait home link here. That's Viva Connections right down at the bottom left. And this brings up our dashboard here. So I want to submit some time off. There's our PTO calendar. I might have an assigned task that might be due soon. We could start approvals. We can open up Viva Learning, Viva Insights. Basically, any other cards that we build show up in this page here. I can still get to the full intranet. So we have our full SharePoint intranet as well. I can still get to that with these tabs here. So I have the tabs at the top of my screenshot here. The dashboard is, what I'm going to see primarily when I open up Viva Connections or open up our intranet within Teams. In the feed tab, that's our news. So any news that gets posted will show up in that feed tab. And finally, this resources tab becomes our global navigation. So that's how I can navigate through the rest of the site. If what I need, maybe I need a customer list or something, and there's not a card on my dashboard for that, I can still navigate the full site with this resources tab. That becomes our navigation for navigating the intranet. Again, the full intranet can still be browsed in Teams using that resources tab and the navigation links in there. And this will make a little more sense once we kind of get into how this is all built out and how it's all wired together and fits together. So what do we need to build out Viva Connections? So there's about 5 steps that need to happen here. We need a communication site. And it can only be a modern communication site, not a team site. So getting Viva Connections going requires a communication site. Then we need to designate that site, or really any site that we have, as a home site. And that's home with a capital H, not just a site called home. It doesn't have to be the root site. It can be any communication sites you have in your organization. But this is a site that gets a special designation as the home site in SharePoint. We'll take a look at how that's set up as well, and what that entails and what it means. Then we build out the dashboard. So those cards we just saw on that mobile screenshot, that is what the kind of the next step. Once we have a home site built out, we'll build out our dashboard and our feed. Then we can configure the global navigation. So we have right now hub navigation in SharePoint that connects, related sites together, and they all share that top navigation. But we also have real, actual, true global navigation that follows you around to every site, no matter where you're at in the intranet. So even if you're on a hub site, you jump over to the HR hub site and your top navigation changes, you can still have the same exact navigation experience in the global navigation, and that appears in the left rail of your intranet, so that left bar in SharePoint. And finally, the last step would be to actually enable Viva Connections in Teams. And that's adding the Viva Connections app and configuring that. And then we'll even go through how to pin that to the Teams app bar, the left side of Teams. So everyone can click that just one click away. They can get into the intranet. All right, so the first step is, again, to build a communication site. So it, again, only works with modern communication sites. It doesn't work with any classic publishing sites or team sites of any variety. So no classic teams, no modern teams. And again, it does not have to be at the root. This can be any communication site anywhere within your intranet. It just needs a place to live. We need to designate a site as a home site. So typically it would be that communication site that you have created. If you already have a communication site, maybe you're using the root site as the home of your intranet. That's great. As long as it's a communication site, it doesn't matter where it lives. The home site, capital H home site in SharePoint, it doesn't, it's not just a site called home. That is, again, that site that gets a special designation and does offer a few extra benefits of being designated as a home site besides just being able to utilize Viva Connections. So that's set in the admin center. I'll show that in just a little bit in the demo when we go through this whole process of setting it up, but that is set in the admin center in the SharePoint settings. So we're looking at the SharePoint admin center in the settings, and then we'll designate the home site there. Or you can also, if you're more comfortable in PowerShell, you can use the set SPO home site command. In fact, that actually used to be the only way to get this whole process rolling, was to use PowerShell, but they've since baked in some UI elements, which is much appreciated for me and other people who like UI stuff. All right, so that home site, once it's designated as a home site, it becomes the official home site of SharePoint, even if it's not at the root. But you do also need to make sure that you have SharePoint administrator permissions, at least, to be able to designate that home site. So what does a home site give us? So this is a little bit of a sidebar here, but the home site, since it's required for Viva, let's take a look at what that actually gets us. It does rescope that search box up in the top suite bar to search org-wide instead of just the current site you're on. That box, generally speaking, will only search the current site that you're in, or once you drill down into a library or a list, it'll search that list. So the scope of that search box will change. So it's searching org-wide rather than just that current site. So that's a nice starting point when you hit the home page, or you hit that home site and people start searching and typing and wanting to find something, that lets them easily search everything. So if they hit the home page and they want benefits, for example, they just type benefits, and instead of just being scoped to that one single home page, it's searching all of HR, all of benefits, everything that it could possibly bring in everywhere within the site. So that is a nice feature. It does let us manage those global navigation settings, which we'll take a look at, and what navigation source we want to provide for that. It does also set the home site as an official source of organizational news. So we can have up to 100 of those official news sites. So maybe we have a communications department that likes to pump out a lot of different news, and they have a news site that's dedicated to company-wide news. This setting the home site also designates the home page or the home site as an official source of company news. That can be turned off. It's just one of those features that gets turned on right away once you go through this process. That can actually be turned off if you decide, no, I don't want any news in my home site. I only want it to be from my official communications department to provide that. So that can be turned off. The other thing that we get is, with that official news source, is being able to see a bold tag on the news web part. We'll again take a look at that, showing that it's coming from an official source of news. We can also add video news links using Stream on SharePoint. So once we designate a site as a news site, it doesn't have to be just the home site, but once a site's designated as an official news site, there is a new option that appears in that new dropdown that lets us add a link to a video, which is kind of nice, and that video will show up in the news feed. You can again set additional news sources with PowerShell. So this is one of those pieces that just doesn't have a UI element to it, but those commands are right there. Set SPO org news site, or get the org news site to see which sites are designated, and then again remove SPO org news site to remove the organizational news sites. So if you set that as a home site and decide, this isn't where the news is going to live, you can open up PowerShell and run that remove SPO org news site commandlet to reset that. Within your SharePoint mobile app, you will see, once you set a site as a home site, you will see a little home icon right at the top of the app, which is kind of a nice way to get back to the home page. And it also gets us that ability to connect to the intranet site right within Teams. So if you're looking to bring in the intranet into Teams, this is one of those steps that you just have to go through. So then we'll set up the dashboard and the news feed. So these are actually web parts that are surfaced once we set that home site. So they are built and managed on that home site. This is where you're going to put your most important links and resources, tasks, news, content. The SharePoint news and Yammer posts can be surfaced in that feed web part, so that can also be brought in through a card within the dashboard. Within that dashboard and those cards that we saw in that screenshot, we can build semi-custom or fully custom cards in the dashboard. So there is a card we can use when we're adding content to our dashboard called the quick design card, and that lets us kind of build out some basically no code cards. We'll provide a title, a heading, a description, maybe an image. It'll give us a couple of buttons to give to add some links to.
Those are the ones I can do.
Yes. So that'll probably be the ones that most people setting this up are going to use, are the cards just built into the dashboard. So there's also cards for just creating links to content. There are some cards that kind of tie into some of the other Teams pieces, like the schedule and approval requests, things like that. So there are quite a few card options. But if none of those meet your needs, you can kind of get into the semi-custom cards using the adaptive card designer. So those are called adaptive cards, and there is a link there. We'll also take a look at what that entails in a bit during the demo. You can build out semi-custom cards. So in that quick designer, you have the option to set the buttons to open up quick, what they call a quick view. So it's basically another pop out that opens up when you click on the card or one of the buttons on the card, and that's where we can have additional content like links, more information, more images, things like that. And finally, if none of that works for you, you can send your designers off to build an adaptive card extension. So they call those an ACE, or adaptive card extensions, and that is built using the SharePoint framework. So if you have developers on staff, then you can task them with building out a custom Viva connection card, and they will love you for it. Hopefully,
you can contact us.
That's right. That's right. So, and if you don't have developers on staff, we do, and we're happy to have them help you out with that. The cards, like a lot of the content in SharePoint, does support audience targeting. So if there are links and tools that only a certain group of people should be seeing in that dashboard, we can audience target those as well. So that is one nice feature. For working with the dashboard, you do need to be at least a site editor on that home site.
And I do like the audience targeting capability, just
Mhm.
especially for frontline workers. If you've got different people in different roles, you need to have stuff at a glance readily available to them on their mobile devices. It's nice that you can target, and so
Mhm.
you're not having to pick and choose a small set of resource links that are going to work for everyone across the organization. That's
Yes,
very
exactly. So
helpful.
that is one thing that is really nice about those cards. You can't have a giant dashboard and only show 5 of them to the people who need those 5 items. Next up is the global navigation. We kind of talked a lot about this already, but this does give us the true global navigation experience, and that is enabled and controlled and configured on that site that we designated as the home site. So the global navigation places the functionality of that little home icon in the left rail of the SharePoint app bar. So instead of clicking that home icon and then being taken to that SharePoint landing page that just kind of gives us the links on the left that maybe the organization is set up, and then all the latest news posts in the main body of the page, that actually becomes a navigation flyout. We can still get to that SharePoint landing page by clicking the SharePoint text at the very top of the page towards the left. That SharePoint text in the suite bar still gets us there, but we can now set the global navigation source. So if we have, say, the home page of our site has a nicely built out hub navigation or nicely built out navigation in the header, we can select either one of those sources as the home or as the global navigation. So then no matter where we're at, we always have those same items that can follow us throughout the site, no matter if we're on our home hub, our HR hub, our IT hub. So no matter what the navigation looks like up top in the hub navigation, or if we're not even using hub navigation, then we can still have that seamless navigation experience follow us everywhere. You can also replace the little home icon if you want. A lot of companies will replace that with a tiny little version of their logo just to make it a little more obvious that that's navigation or something that's related to the company intranet. And then in Teams, clicking on the Viva Connections icon will open up your dashboard or your intranet. And you might be wondering, well, where's my global navigation then? In the Teams desktop app, clicking that Viva Connections logo again will bring up that global navigation. So it's not really an obvious thing, but that is the way that we can still bring in that global navigation within Teams. And in the Teams mobile app, that becomes the resources tab. Alrighty, let's see what's next. Viva Connections. We're going to add that to Teams. We're going to add the Viva Connections app that's done within the Teams admin center, and we need a couple of requirements for this. We need to build a 192 by 192 pixel color logo in the Teams app, and that's going to show up if anyone's searching for our Connections app within Teams. When any of the users want to pin that themselves, that's the logo that'll show up. And then we also need a little 32 by 32, like an outline logo. That needs to be a transparent PNG image, and that little 32 by 32 pixel logo is what shows up in the left-hand bar of Teams. And we'll again take a look at that too. So the app can be pinned to Teams by a Teams admin, so we don't have to tell all the users to go out and find their intranet app and pin that themselves. We can actually do that for them, which is really a nice feature. We can position that right at the top of their Teams app bar, and that way it's one click away when you're in Teams. You do need Teams admin or higher, so a Teams admin or a global admin to be able to actually do this in the admin center. So that'll be something, if you're not a Teams admin, you'll want to find your Teams admin and ask them nicely to do that. One thing to note is that the desktop experience for Viva Connections is supposed to change sometime early this year, and they may even be rolling that out now, but that will show a different view of the dashboard and resources. That can actually be configured to show your full intranet, but they are rolling out a new style of how that'll look.
Yeah.
And you have mixed feelings about that, because you spend a lot of time setting up your nice internet, and you want to bring that into Teams and continue that seamless experience for what people are used to seeing when they open up their browser and navigate the internet they want that same experience in Teams. This is changing a little bit to be more focused on the dashboard and the news feed side of Viva. But there is a command at the bottom of the slide that does let you change that default experience. So
yeah, there's some, actually, Ryan, we had a question kind of about this and just in general, from Benedite. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he was saying, usually do you display the dashboard also in the intranet itself, when you were talking about the dashboard, and then do you recommend that the intranet should be the home site? So I just kind of mentioned that we do tend to recommend still, we often are putting the dashboard on a lot of the home pages that we design when that's set up already, because it's just a nice thing to include for people who are going in through the browser as well. And that in general, at least right now, we are still kind of recommending and seeing clients who want to have the intranet homepage be what they designate as the home site, and therefore they also want that to be what's displayed when they use Viva Connections. They don't want this new experience. And we did have at least one client who panicked when they got this, word about the change, because just like you said, they do all this work to get this beautiful intranet home, and then that's what they want people to see when they're inside of Teams, so they know this is my intranet. This dashboard, this new design that they're rolling out, I'm with you. I've got mixed feelings about it. I mean, it looks much more like the dashboard experience in the app. So I did read that it's, rolling out right now in targeted release, and it's supposed to be, at least, again, as of right now, things change, but they're saying by mid-year, the end of, I guess Q2 for 2023, it should be in general availability. And then GCC, I think, is coming later. So
good deal. Yeah.
But yeah,
it's definitely
something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, something to keep an eye on. And I believe if you have it already set up, they're not just going to wipe out your settings and change that. This would be for new Viva Connection setups once that's all rolled out. If maybe in August of this year you decide, what, maybe we should get into Viva, and you roll that out and you set everything up, and then you open up your Viva Connections app in Teams, and all of a sudden it doesn't look anything like your intranet. That's probably what's going on. Now, if you have your Viva Connections app existing, it's already set up, it's already configured within Teams, I don't believe anything's going to change for you, but just something to be aware of in case you're thinking about setting Viva up, and just something we don't want you to get caught off guard by.
Right.
So that again is the command right here for setting that if you want to change that home experience.
Yeah. And one other thing to note about that, Ryan, is the fact that, if you are, we talked about the fact that you need to have a communication site set as your home site for the current state. Right now, how you're setting up Viva Connections as of January 2023, that's what you need. These are the different things that you need to get this to work right now. But because of this change, I believe, what they're saying is they are simplifying this in part because they have some customers who don't want to set up an intranet home site and design a page and do all of that work. And this enables them to not, they kind of have a simpler way to get the resources they need by just, setting up a dashboard and not doing an intranet home site, designated home site, and all of that. So definitely, if that particular part of this is of any concern, look into that more, reach out to us, because we have those links and resources we can share to you.
Exactly. All right, so I know this is kind of a lot of slides and talking here. Luckily, it's demo time now, and we'll see how this looks in action and what this all means. So I have a communication site already here. Okay, so I've built this out. This is not, you'll notice this is not my home page, my root site. This is just a site within my tenant here. And let's kind of just scroll through this real quick. It's kind of what you'd expect to see on on an intranet. We got news, we have links, we have events, we have some more resources, we have additional quick links, things like that, spotlight, announcements. And here's one thing I do want to point out here. These announcements here are coming from Contoso Home and our human resources site. So this is going to look a little bit different once I designate this site as my home site. So we'll see what that official news designation does here to this little tag showing where that content is coming from. And then there's the rest of my site right at the bottom of the page there. Alrighty, and let's see here. One last thing to show is what our settings gear looks like, what our settings menu looks like. Here should be pretty familiar to anybody who has worked with SharePoint for any amount of time, but this will be a little bit different as soon as we run that command to set this as the home site. Lastly, I do want to show that clicking on my SharePoint start page icon here does right now take me to that SharePoint start page. And that will also be changing as well. So first thing I need to do, let's see, I should also point out that I do have my hub navigation set up, and then that is, if you're not familiar with that, that is also done within your SharePoint Admin Center and the active sites. All right, so the next thing I need to do is set this as an actual home site. So how do we do that? That is done in the SharePoint Admin Center. So I'm going to click my waffle menu. I'm going to go to my Admin Center here. This is my 365 admin. And from here, I will open up my SharePoint Admin Center. If you're not seeing this, a couple of ways of doing that. Easiest way is to click on Show All and then find SharePoint. I have this pinned, so it always shows up for me. So I'm just going to click on my SharePoint Admin Center to open that. And once my Admin Center opens up, I'm going to open up the settings for SharePoint. So this is again my SharePoint Admin Center. I'm going to open up my SharePoint settings. And the second option here is my home site. So I'm going to click on that. And it's going to ask me what site I want to designate as the home site. Now I can add in, according to their example here, I can add in the full URL of my site, or I can just add in the relative URL. So, well, that seems a lot easier. I'll just do that. Either way works. I've tested them both out and it does not make a difference either way. So I'm going to add in my site/Contoso as my home site here. I'm going to hit save. And it was just that easy.
Did you notice that it says, this site, it's checking, and it says this site can be designated as your home site. Yep. That's because it is a modern communication site.
Yep. Yeah. If I tried to do that with a team site or a publishing classic site, it would yell at me. All right, now back here, if I refresh this page. All right, first thing, let's take a look at, as soon as that settings gear loads, there we go. I have a couple of extra options here. I have global navigation and I have manage Viva Connections. Cool. Okay, well, that was easy. The other thing here, this also says search in SharePoint in my search box there. So that's going to search everything instead of just saying search this site. If I scroll down the page to my announcements here, that looks a little bit different too. So now I've got this Contoso home tag in this nice bold box here, showing that this is coming from a designated news source. So I can again set additional sites. If I have a communications team who has a dedicated news site, I can also tag that as an official news source. And any content that rolls up anywhere will get a tag like this with that bold box around it, just to kind of show that that's official news. The human resources page here does not have that. If I designated that site as a official news site as well, then it would also show up with that bold box.
And it's only the official news sites that have boosted news, right, as an option,
yes, exactly.
Which comes into play later on when you look at the dashboard.
Exactly. So there is the boosted news too, that lets you kind of give the news a little extra push to make sure that it's showing up to everyone who needs that. All right, so that's kind of what it does to our home site here. Right now, this icon still shows my SharePoint start page. We have, let's see, designated. Oops, I just lost my. There we go. Lost that. Now we're back. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to open up the dashboard and take a look at what the Viva Connections dashboard experience looks like. All right, so that is, you'll recall, under my settings gear, my new option, Manage Viva Connections. Okay, what does that give me? This gives me a little bit more information on managing the dashboard. So now I can actually view the dashboard here, and that's going to open up a special dashboard page. Okay, close this guy here, close my settings. All right, well, this is interesting. What do I do here? Well, if I edit this page, oh, now it's doing something cool. We get a preview of what that dashboard experience is going to look like. So right now it defaults to the mobile experience, kind of like that screenshot we saw in the slide deck. If I want, I can preview what this would look like on the desktop. I can, save the page, I can discard the page, I can preview the page and publish the page. So really building out your dashboard is kind of like building out any page, almost like a page within a page. So if I want to switch to, say, the desktop experience, I can click that button and I'm going to add a card. Okay, so adding a card is a lot like adding a web part. I don't have all the same options here, but I do have things like approvals, assign tasks. Here's that card designer. I can add shifts. I can add any app that's in Teams. I can bring forward and show that. Top news, that might be important. Viva Learning. If I want to provide access to Viva Learning content, I can do that within here. A web link, that's pretty, let's try that. Web link. All right. When I add a card, this is what it looks like. I can kind of switch back and forth between the preview of the desktop and mobile and see what we're looking like there. And then you'll also notice when I add the card, I get that familiar editing button. So each card is kind of like its own little web part on my dashboard page here. If I edit that card, let's just take a look at what kind of options I get. So I can change the card size from medium to medium and large. There's no such thing as small. It's all medium and large now. So large just basically doubles the size of that card. Since this is a web link card, I can provide a URL. So let's just do pategroup.com. And it's nice and helpful. And since it's a web link, it goes out and tries to find any meta information on that site that you give it, kind of like the news does when you add a news item or a news link. It tries to be helpful and get the title of the page and a description of the page. So that's what happened here. It went out and grabbed the meta image and the meta description that we had for our Pait Group website. So you can obviously change that if you don't like the title or the description that it provides here. We can change the image. And we can also change the little icon here that shows next to the title of the card. So if I wanted to change that icon, I can do that. It's very much like the icon browser in the quick link web part, for example, except these are a little bit differently styled. So there's less of them and they are the more filled in style icons rather than the outline icons you might be more familiar with in the other icon picker. But the interface is largely the same, just the icons are a little bit different. Okay, so there's one card. Let's just take a look at what this looks like if I make this large. It essentially just kind of reshuffles things around a bit. When I click on that, obviously it's going to open the Pait Group website. And that's my options for this particular card. Here down at the very bottom, I guess I should show, is the audience targeting. So if I wanted to target this link to a certain group of people, maybe you have a tool or a resource online that only a handful of users should see. This is where you would set that option to show that to those users. Let's add another card. Let's do maybe a card designer and see what that experience looks like. So this one gives us a few extra options here. Maybe I'll make this one large as well. So you can see that it again expands. The card designer, the heading and description text placeholders are there. You can see that the title, where it says card designer, that's the title of the card, which for me personally, I find a little confusing. You expect the title to be big, but the heading is the big text here. So you might maybe, instead of a title, maybe that would be more of a card label. In this one, maybe I want to set up, maybe benefits, or maybe I want to call this HR or something. And for the heading, let's call this benefits sign up, and change our description. Let's say new New benefit information available. We do have an icon here we can change. What if we change that? Oh, I don't know. Let's just change it to a smiley face. And now I also have the option to set my button controls here. So if I scroll down my settings a bit, there is the action, card action. This is what happens when I click on the card itself. So we have basically 2 to 3 actions available per card. I can set an action when I click on the actual card. I can set an action for clicking on each of these buttons as well. And I also have the ability to toggle these buttons on and off. So if I need 2 buttons, I have 2 buttons. If I only need 1 button, I can turn one of them off. So if I click on this card, I can send it to a link. If I click on the card, I can have it open up a quick view here. Take a look at what that means in just a second. Show the quick view. Go to a link, go to a Teams app, select media, select a location. So a lot of different actions that we can play with on these cards, on this card designer. So I can again toggle off my buttons if I don't need that. I can change the title of the button. Let's call this Learn More. The action, let's make this one in the quick view instead of going to a link. Maybe we want to turn that one on. Sign up. Maybe this one we can send to a link. That to Pait group. And the other thing you may have noticed too is that there is an option for changing the display of this. So I can just show a heading. I can show a heading and an image. That does open up this image picker down here. Let's say I want to do stock image search, and let's just do signature. Let's do this guy here. All right, so now our card's kind of looking nice here. I did lose my description when I changed that to the image. That's why there's the description option as well. The picture does tend to squish the buttons a bit, so that's something to be aware of as well. Let's go ahead and go back to description for that one. All right, so what else do we get with this card here? So it said that if I want to show the quick view, I need to actually set up the quick view here. And what does that mean? So the quick view is the little flyout option when I click on a button that activates that. So let me show you what that means. If I click off of this, and let's just say I want to preview this card here. There's a little reminder that if you're not seeing all your cards, you might have them audience targeted. Now, when I click on this card here, this is the quick view that flies out. Okay, same with my Learn More button. If I click that, that's the quick view that flies out. If I click Sign Up, that's going to take us over to the Pait Group homepage here. Close that. So how do we change the look of this? So this is just kind of the what we get out of the box for quick view, just a hello world example, basically. So we can actually customize that, and we do that by going to adaptivecards.io. And this is Microsoft's card framework that's basically, they call it a platform agnostic snippets of UI, which is, it's kind of true. If you look at their little animation here, the same little box can show up in a number of different apps on a number of platforms and still retain the same overall look and adapt to the style of whatever it's being displayed in. So this is getting a little bit outside of Viva, but you can, since Viva is very card based, you can come in here and design certain cards. And if let's see, actually, let me open up the samples here just to show really fast a couple of different examples of what those cards could look like. If I click through this little gallery here, I can show. You can see like there's some code here and some template and some data and a little preview of what that would look like. So this over here would be what would show up in that flyout. So to build that, we would click into this designer tab. And this gives us kind of a preview of what our card would look like. On the left-hand side, this is elements that we can add to the card. The card structure is basically a nested tree view of what is in the card here. And then the properties, if I select, say, maybe this text block here for the description, these are the properties I can set for that particular block of text. And then down below, this is a JSON view of how this card is constructed. And then the sample data editor lets me separate my template from what's actually displaying, so I don't have to bake in the name of everything right into my template. So again, this is somewhat limited in that this doesn't let you pull in dynamic content very easily. That's where you would probably need to have your developers involved to be able to take this and wire it up to your dynamic content. But if you're looking to do something, a simple display, or if you design a nice card, you can hand this off to those developers, and then they can take the look and feel of this and the JSON that you give them, and then bring in those dynamic elements through code as necessary. But just really quick, as I'm clicking through here, I want to maybe look at the entire structure of this card here. If I click on this heading, I can see that within this adaptive card, I have this text block, which is the bold publish adaptive card schema here, and I can see the text block properties here. I can change the layout of that. Not a whole lot is set on this here, but if I wanted to change say the font style, I could do that. The size of that, I can change here, change that. And then I also do get a little bit of a preview up top here. This interface, by the way, I think reminds me a little bit of Power Apps in the way that that's laid out. So if you're familiar with Power Apps, this probably will be somewhat familiar to you. Let's take a look at what this would look like in Viva Connections. The card style changes slightly depending on what you select here, but overall the content remains the same. So if I wanted to look at this paragraph here, you can see that that's nested within the card, within this, let's see, underneath this column set, there's another block. In this column set here, if I select that, you can see that I've got two columns, a column with an image and then another column with more text in it. So it's pretty, once you click around in this a little bit, it's kind of intuitive to see how this is laid out. And then what can we do with this actually? So how does that play into that quick view? Well, if I take my card payload editor and my sample data editor here, I can copy those. I'm going to select all and copy that. And back on my dashboard page, I'm going to edit my card again here. And down at the very bottom, this is the quick view layout and data. So the template JSON, if I select that, clear that out, and then paste in my template that I just grabbed from my designer here. And then I want to bring over the sample data editor. You can actually see as you look through this, the title here, publish adaptive card schema. That's the title that shows up top. When I find that same guy up here, where is that? There we go. So this text block here, you can see some of the properties that have been configured, and the text that's actually displaying is coming from this title block over here. So it's referencing that title and pulling in publish adaptive card schema. So if I wanted to do this and change this to Viva Connections demo, you can see that I didn't have to change my template at all. I just changed my data over here, and that changes the display text. So now if I copy this and paste this in here, and let's preview that. Let's take a look at what this looks like. Now, if I click on that, I'm going to see that same card that I was just messing with on that adaptive card site. And that's what that looks like once you bring that into Viva. Just as another quick example, if I wanted to see, I have this already set up. And if I paste that into adaptive cards over here, that's my template, and then here is some data. Paste that in. That's not showing my preview over here. Okay, that didn't work. All right, so we'll do that over on the card itself then. Edit the card. Here we'll paste in our data. And we'll paste in our template. All right, now we can preview that. And completely different look here. This is just something I was screwing around with bringing in some images and a link here, but that's essentially what another option you could do is showing you you can construct different kind of cards and show those on your Viva dashboard. So in the mobile experience, what this would look like is when you click that learn more button here, well, I can actually show you. If I close the switch over to my mobile preview here, this is what that's going to look like on a phone. Instead of, well, obviously instead of flying out like that, it would actually just kind of appear above the card. So it's not the greatest preview here, but that's what that would look like on a mobile device as well. So you get that same kind of experience. Alrighty, I know we are coming up on time and there's probably more to do, but that's kind of a quick demo on setting up the cards. Let's see what else we need to do. We need to add this dashboard to our home page here. I'm going to publish the dashboard. I'm going to go back to my home page here and edit that. And let's just throw that right up above the events here. So now that I have activated Viva, I have this dashboard for Viva Connections, and look at that. There's my cards that I just built. The other piece here that I can add in, if I search for feed, is this feed for Viva Connections, and this is basically relevant news that Viva thinks should be seen by you. So it's pulling it in from a few different places here. These are just some news pages I was messing with at some point, trying to get some sizing right for the images. That's why all these are showing up here. Let's take a look at the settings for the web part. I can change the layout of that to vertical or horizontal. So this, if you have a right-hand column enabled, that might be a good place to use this horizontal, or excuse me, the vertical layout. I can fit the web part to the height of the page, or I can select a number of items to display if I want to limit that. So not a whole lot of display options here. The dashboard is also similarly limited. This basically lets you decide how many items you want to display at a time on this page. If I have more items displaying, or more items in my dashboard than I have displaying, then I will get an option to see all. No, I guess I didn't hit the magic number. I think it's like 4 maybe.
Yeah, they always have those magic numbers for news as well. That's like,
so
I always forget what it is too.
Didn't build out enough cards there to show that, but just like the news, there would be a little see all link right in the upper right corner of that web part to open up the full dashboard if you needed to. Okay, so there's the dashboard and feed on my page. Let's take a look at what this is going to look like to actually work with the global navigation. So global nav, under my settings gear here, I'm going to enable the global navigation. Okay, cool. So let's upload a logo here. Let's do, I actually had this all set up. Where did it go? Right here. Let's do this one, dark logo. It'll show up nicely on my, to replace my home icon there. And let's select a navigation source. So you can actually title your navigation. We'll call it My Contoso Intranet. And we get to select where that comes from, either the home site or the global navigation. So the home site navigation would be home, documents, pages, anything that's in this header here. The hub or global navigation would be basically what I built out up top here. If I want this to follow me everywhere, I'm going to go ahead and select that, and we'll click on Save. And look at that, I've changed my icon there. If I click on that, there is my global navigation that matches my hub navigation. So now if I were to open up another site within my tenant, this would actually follow me around, which is really cool. For example, I guess if I go to just the root site here, a lot going on here. If I click on that global navigation, you can also see that follows me around from my Contoso site, even though this home site is not a hub site, doesn't have that hub site navigation, but I can still have that same global navigation following me around, which is really cool. All right, so what next? So the last piece of this really would be to kind of get Viva wired up into Teams. So if I switch over to this tab here, I've got Teams set up. This is my demo tenant. There's not a whole lot going on here, but if I jump back into my Microsoft 365 Admin Center, I need to open up Teams. So again, if you don't see that, you can click that Show All to open up every Admin Center and then pick Teams. All right, and then within the Teams Admin Center, there's a number of steps to do to actually get that Teams app going. So we need to open up the Teams apps and manage apps. And the first thing we need to do is to find Viva Connections. Fortunately, we can just do a search for Viva and we'll get all the Viva stuff plus code by Vivani, since it's just looking for VIVA in the name of the app. So here's Viva Connections. You may, when you first fire this up, if you haven't messed with this before, you may need to change the status to allowed to allowed. Otherwise, I think it by default, I think it shows as blocked like that. So you just want to enable that. And really, if you don't want to, you don't actually have to go through these next set of steps. But this is just a nice way of customizing the Viva experience and kind of making that intranet feel a little bit more personalized and like it's part of the company. And this app does allow customization. So if I click on customizable or click on the edit icon under the customizable header here, I get this customized panel. So the short name is what will actually show up in the left rail here. So the short name here would be activity or chat or teams. So that's the short name. I could change this to Contoso Intranet, or I could change that to maybe my intranet. We'll just do that. And we can change the description. We can change the privacy policy URL, the website URL if we wanted to. Basically, any settings that relate to this app. So it's not really going to show up much in Teams. The main thing you want to look at is your short name there. If you have a company privacy policy and you want to link to your company website, maybe we want to just go to paitgroup.com. You can change the full description as well. And down here is where we can actually set those icons. So I'm going to change this full color icon here to this one here and this outline icon. If I upload this one here, this is just, again, a 32 by 32 white icon with a transparent background. And Teams will actually take care of coloring that icon to match the same style within that Teams app. So change my icon. This accent color really honestly doesn't show up hardly anywhere, so you really don't need to worry that much about it. It's if you are browsing the Teams store, there is the Teams app store. You might find an icon with this accent color behind your logo, so it hardly shows up anywhere that you would need to be concerned about, but you could always plug in a company approved branding color in here and that would become a background behind your logo. So that may or may not work well with your branding, but that's what that accent color is. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and publish that application. And one other thing to be aware of now, the title of that has changed and the logo has changed. If you're testing this out and you decide you want to reset this back to its default settings to roll this out later, I have a nice hidden little feature here. This little ellipses up towards the right of your title card under Actions. Because this is a customizable option, this does actually allow me to reset this to the default, and that would just bring back the Viva Connections logo, the Viva Connections title. And that may be important because now we can actually go into our setup policies. Now we're going to actually, this is where we pin the app to Teams. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my global org-wide default policy here. If you have other policies you're using for different groups of users, you may have to do this in other policies as well. But since this is probably what most people are using here, I'm going to go ahead and click on that custom or that global org-wide default policy. I'm going to come down here to add an app. Or I'm sorry, I'm going to come down here to add an app under pinned apps. And it's going to ask me what I want to find. So we can't do a browse for this. We have to know the name of the app that we're going to pin here. In this case, if I type in Viva and try and search for Viva Connections there, you'll notice that it is not showing up anymore. And that's because I customized that app and changed the name. So now it is called My Intranet. And there it is. There's my logo. There's my intranet name. Now I can actually add that. So if I'm done adding apps here, I'm going to go ahead and say add. And down at the bottom here, there it is. But I want this at the top. I want this to be the first thing that people click. So I'm going to actually click and drag that up to the top there. I could also use the little arrows to move that up or down. And I'm going to save this. So this does actually take a little bit of time to show up in Teams. So if you click on confirm and you switch over to Teams, it's probably not going to show up right away. It can take anywhere from a few minutes to like a whole day to show up, just to be aware. So if you may want to do some testing in your environment to see how long that typically takes, but it's not instant. And in fact, we may not even see this show up by the end of the demo here, unfortunately. But I do want to point out what that would look like if I were to pin that. Here's another example of why that transparent icon, by the way, is important. This is a solid background here, an old app that we were developing at one point, and I was messing with the icons. And this is not a transparent background, and you can see that as Teams tries to recolor that, it looks really terrible. So I like to leave that on as a reminder for what not to do. Let me go ahead and actually refresh this tab here. See if that will show up for us or not. And if not, we may just want to try pinning that. Okay, it did not. Let's see if
we've definitely seen that take a while.
Yes. Let me find the app, My Intranet. Yeah, it may not even show up for us yet. So this whole Teams pinning and publishing really can take a bit of time.
Yeah.
So just to be aware, and unfortunately, I wish that we had more time to show this.
But yeah,
I will slide this off to the side, and maybe it'll show up by the end of our time here. But did want to show this this slide here to highlight some different content and resources that you might find useful. We have our overview of Viva setup, what you get from that organization news site, some information about the home site, setting the global nav, working with your dashboard, some boosted news, which is kind of an interesting read if you're looking to see how that news gets affected by things like the org news site and all that. And finally, some information on the different Viva modules. If anyone's taken a screenshot of that, I'll leave that up for just a second here. Otherwise, I think we could try and provide this in a follow-up communication. Let's see here. I think that should just about cover us for our time today.
Thank you so much for going through all that, Ryan.
Absolutely.
It really is
kind of a lot
very
to set
cool.
up, but
yeah, it's a lot to set up, which is why, I love that we're able to provide that for those who are interested in trying this out and doing this themselves.
Exactly.
I think the key piece really that takes a lot of that setup time is, kind of deciding what's going to be in that dashboard.
Yep,
and
exactly.
setting up those cards, and then really deciding like, how are you going to do your logo? What are those, what do you want to call it? A lot of those things are really what will take up probably more of our time, I think, when we're setting these up for our clients, for sure. But I think Microsoft has done a pretty decent job of giving those instructions, but I have not seen any real walkthroughs. So I think this is great that you were able to do that for everyone today. And I really appreciate your spending the time putting all of this together.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I appreciate those who joined us, and Benedite for sharing your questions. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Exciting developments here on my Teams tab. My if I search for My Intranet, is now showing up here. So let's go ahead and add this. So you can at least see what it looks like. Yeah. See what that's going to look like. There we go. So that is My Intranet on the Teams rail. I had to add this manually, so I just went to my apps and did a search for it and added it manually. But in about a day, if anyone wants to hang around that long, this will actually automatically show up for me, and any other users that are in my tenant here. Yeah, because I did set that as a global policy. And here, if I click that again,
activate it and you don't pin it for folks. They still can go and get it once you've got that allowed, right? They can go and add it themselves, and they can put it wherever they want it. But it's ideal if you're really trying to deploy this for your entire organization to do it for them, have that pinned and have it in the location you want everyone to see it. So, but yeah, patience is a virtue, right? You got to wait a day.
Yes, exactly. So that's what that would look like, and that's where that icon comes in handy right there, with that white icon with the transparent background, so you don't end up with something that looks like mud down here. So that's what that will look like in Teams, in your SharePoint site in Teams. Let's see here. We have one more. Yes, we do have one more slide here.
Yes. So yes, thank you for the start to finish for Viva Connections. That's really, everyone who joined us and who watches this later, you really are equipped now with all you need to know. I think really all you need beyond what you learned today is just keeping tabs on what Microsoft rolls out with these changes for that Viva Connections desktop experience. Keep an eye on the announcements around that and the changes for that. And certainly if you want to do what Ryan did today, make sure that you set this up using that home site option, because I personally prefer this to the new dashboard. We'll see if we'll see what I eventually think, but yes, please join us as we continue talking about Viva. I'm going to be kind of leading the next session that we do on Valentine's Day appropriately, because we want you to fall in love with Viva Engage, which you may simultaneously think of as Yammer. I think in most ways they are pretty much the same, but we want to talk specifically about why this is now Viva Engage, what that means for that experience inside of Teams. So please do plan to join us on February 14th, same time slot, but that is a Tuesday, I believe. Is that a Tuesday? Yeah, I think it's a Tuesday.
So
we look forward.
QR code and a link there.
Yes,
so
yeah, you can scan that to register. So please do scan the QR code and get into that registration link. And thank you again to everyone who joined us today. All right, thank you, Ryan.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody.
Take care. Bye.